Good evening and welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for the City of Cedar Falls for June 23rd, 2021. We're joining you tonight in person, but post-COVID, we also have lots of other options for you to join, both by video conference, online, Channel 15, YouTube, and you can see those instructions online. With that, we'll bring the meeting to order. Michelle, are you gonna, a roll call?
Okay. Hartley.
Here.
Hoist.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Leeper.
Here.
Lynch is not able to attend. Prideaux.
Here.
Saul.
Here.
Schrod.
Here.
And Sears.
Here.
Okay, and she is on Zoom.
Thank you. With that, we'll call the meeting to order and entertain a motion to approve the June 9th, 2021 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm not real familiar with voices yet. You second? Okay.
All right, with that, we'll open it up to public comments for items that are not on the agenda tonight. So if there's any items on that are not on the agenda that anyone would speak to, you can raise your hand on the Zoom call or come up to the microphone.
I'm not seeing anything in Zoom.
All right, seeing none, we'll move on to old business. And those items I will be abstaining on, the three items in old business. So I'm going to pass this on to Kyle.
Thank you. So first item of old business is 5909 Prairie Parkway by Oster Family Limited Partnership. And I'll turn it over to whomever is presenting that.
Thank you. The parcel is located on the northeast corner of Viking Road and Prairie Parkway. The parcel is, Menards is to the south, John Deere is to the north, and the tire discount is to the east. Viking Road Trail runs along this area as well on the southern part of the site. The trail connects from Goldenrod Way to Andrea Drive, which connects to Brandywine Boulevard, which connects to the Cedar Perry Trail. The applicant is proposing to replat the Pinnacle Prairie Commercial South Phase 2 of Lot 2. The revision also includes a deed of dedication, a revision of the Pinnacle Prairie Commercial South Phase 2 to allow access onto Prairie Parkway. The applicant proposes two private streets connecting. The north-south street will go into Lot 3, which is the eastern lot, 25 feet by an easement. The east-west street will have a right-in, right-out onto Prairie Parkway. The applicant also proposes to connect the stormwater for the subdivision to the Greater Pinnacle Prairie Master Plan Stormwater Regional Basin. The parcel is located in the Highway Commercial Zoning District. With that district, there's a 20-foot setbacks along the perimeter of the subdivision, as well as any public right-of-ways. The private street will be installed in the first building that we will discuss later on tonight. The deed of dedication outlines that the owners association will maintain the private streets, private utilities, and the common shared property. The north-south street will be aligned to the Menards access to Brandywine Boulevard, and the sidewalk on Prairie Parkway will be installed with the first building. The sidewalk along Brandy Boulevard, which is the north property line, will be installed either when Lot 1 or 4 is developed. And then the parcel also the subdivision also includes a small dedication of right-of-way to accommodate for a sidewalk on the southwest corner of the subdivision. Staff has reviewed the rest of the criteria as outlined in the staff report, and staff recommends approval tonight of the preliminary plat and final plat, with conditions, anything directed by the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as conforming to the city staff recommendations and technical requirements as listed in the code. And staff is available for any questions, and the applicant is present tonight.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything to add to the presentation at this time?
Hello, I'm Alex Bauer. One thing that came to us, Merrill Oster has a prospect to sell Lot 1, the proposed Lot 1, 2, and they would require roughly an additional 15 feet from Lot 4. So that would move that shared lot line east roughly 15 feet. I request that the approval include the ability to shift that property line up to 15 feet to the east.
Can we actually do that?
It is my recommendation that we continue continue this hearing until next meeting, but there is no minimum lot requirements, so there's not much to say on it as for a staff review.
So we have the option to approve the preliminary plat with the proposed change subject to staff review. Is that an option? And if there's comfort for continuing the item to the next meeting, does that create any issue?
Well, I know that as part of doing the subdivision, it also is parallel to move forward with the Unity Point Clinic that's proposed. That's also on the agenda tonight, and they have a very stern deadline this winter, and so they're really pushing hard to get approval. So 2 weeks adds up in construction.
So what's the implications, though, if we just approve it as is and you come back and amend it the next time around? I don't think that would keep Unity Point moving ahead.
Well, we can't build without the parcels split.
That's what I'm saying. If it was approved, you could come back and amend it later if that transaction for this other property ends up going ahead.
If the
Are you saying redivide it?
We amend it, right? Okay.
it would be what do we call it here?
In order to change a platted lot line, we'd have to replat it.
Right.
The city has a process in which to approve a boundary line adjustment up to 20% of the division of the area through administrative review.
I'm good with that.
So we could approve the preliminary plat as proposed now with this revision subject to staff review, and that wouldn't hold anything up.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
No, that's good.
Okay.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you. I believe at this point we will open up this item to public comment.
I'm seeing none on Zoom.
Okay. We'll close public comment, bring it back to the commission. Any thoughts or questions or ideas?
With that adjustment to the lot line, will that affect any easements or anything that we need to be concerned about?
It would alter the
Setbacks, maybe?
it would change. Well, it would alter slightly the easement to the north on Lot 4.
Okay.
There's a sewer easement on Lot 4 that would,
So, yeah, right now you got two easements on Lot 4 taking up 38 foot of that whole east side. Take another 15 feet off that, that's 53 feet out of 154 foot. You're leaving 100 foot of buildable, well, not even 100 foot because if there's any setback on the west. So, I mean, that does get narrow. So you might want to, I don't know. Things may need to shift more than that. I don't, for easements or whatever.
If I may comment, I was shown the schematic for Lot 1, and I had indicated to the Oster Group that if they make this adjustment as they're requesting, that they have to have an ingress egress on the southerly portion of Lot 1 to accommodate Lot 4. So that way that they would get extra maneuverment ability, basically ingress egress, to accommodate a slightly smaller building area.
But that does then change the whole layout concept fairly substantially from what we're showing here, because right now, that egress would be right along that east property line, lined up with Menards, right?
Nothing shown that you're seeing for infrastructure would change. So the schematic of Lot 1 has its own internal drives, and on those internal drives, they would need to provide an ingress egress accommodation to Lot 4. So they have a drive that's roughly about the same location as the Unity Point Clinic drive on that east-west shared drive.
Okay, I think we're talking about two different things. So I'm talking about access to Brandywine Boulevard.
That would not change.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, I'd reiterate, staff would probably think is the cleanest way to continue this hearing to the next meeting, where we can visualize or see a visual for this versus conceptual.
I mean, it's just hard to approve something with two different options. I don't know.
Well, I suppose we could have a motion either way.
So there's nothing proposed for Lot 4 yet?
Correct. Nothing is proposed for Lot 4 at this time.
And neither is 2 and 3, right? Just Lot 1?
2 is on the proposed Lot 2. The build-out of that is proposed tonight
Oh,
on the
okay,
agenda.
that's right.
Yep. 1, there's a conceptual for. I think that Michelle had a good point that while Lot 1 is working through their conceptual with the Oster Group, they can move forward with, if we move forward with the plat as it's shown, the Oster Group can move forward with conceptuals for lots 4 and 1, and they can work through the administrative lot line adjustment at a later date. I think that would add a lot of clarity at that time through that technical review, rather than try to work out the details, because if we show the lot line moving 15 feet east, that doesn't show you any of that internal movement, and I cannot share the conceptual that I've seen for Lot 1 because it's still, how do you put it, confidential at this time, so.
So I would feel a lot more comfortable approving it as is, which I think is
Correct.
fine. And then if there's, because it doesn't sound like you have a hard and fast deal anyway, so, if that adjustment can be made with the staff,
I
after
think-
the fact, that would be preferable to me, because I get, it's hard to approve something conceptual that we don't have a full staff report on, that type of thing. But, I don't think it's a big deal to move that lot line personally, but it just needs to.
No, and
Okay, cool.
if it is just an administrative review, then that provides, the flexibility with the Oster Group that they don't have the process here
Yep.
going through the commission and then city council again, so.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I make a motion to approve the preliminary plat as shown, with the understanding that there may be a lot line adjustment worked out with the staff between lots 1 and 4.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
I second.
Any other comments or questions? We have a roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Leeper abstained. Lynch? Trudeau?
Aye.
Saul?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Sears?
She's muted.
Sears.
Aye. Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Okay, so we have 7 yea votes.
So that preliminary plat moves forward to council, and any conversations we've had about moving that lot line will be done administratively at a future point. All right, next item, we've got final plat at 5909 Prairie Parkway. What new do we have to go into that?
The staff report was, and presentation was for both the preliminary and final plat. So if nothing else to add, just for the final plat.
So then, forgive my training wheels here, do we need to open this item separately up to public comment? And, okay, so no new presentation.
Correct.
Any, anything the applicant would like to add to the final plat on this item? All right, then we'll open things up to public comment.
Nothing on Zoom?
Okay, back to commission for discussion and, or a motion to approve the final plat as proposed.
I move to approve final plat as proposed.
Bordeaux, second.
Okay, anything else anyone wishes to add or ask? I guess we have a roll call vote for final plat.
Tom, can you speak into the mic? Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Hartley?
Aye.
Holst?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Leeper is abstaining. Lynch is absent. Trudeau?
Aye.
Saul?
Aye.
Schrod?
Aye.
Sears?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carried with 7 votes.
All right, final plat passes, moves along to council. Next up, we have site plan review for the same location.
Thank you. As discussed already, we're looking at Lot 2 of the Clinical Prairie Commercial South Phase 4, or 5. And Lot 2 is the southwest corner of that subdivision that we just looked at. The applicant is proposing a 401-foot building, and the site plan includes 27 parking spaces, a dumpster enclosure, access to the north onto a private street. The streets will be built out at the time a Unity Point Clinic is built, and there will be a sidewalk be installed at the western property along Prairie Parkway. The applicant proposes 20% of the lot to be covered in landscaping that are outside the setbacks. As outlined in the staff report, staff finds that the open space, parking, landscaping, signage, and the uses are allowed within the Highway 1 district. Within the Highway 1 district, a design review is required. The applicant is proposing a 1-story building with a flat roof and additional parapets to add variety to the roof. The applicant also proposes the building materials being a fiber cement in a gray color and a redwood color with corrugated metal panels in a light gray. After reviewing the building design, staff recommends approval of the design review and site plan review for the Unity Point Clinic with the conditions that are outlined tonight in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and as well as the staff recommendations and technical requirements. Staff is available for any questions.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to add anything to the site plan presentation? Thank you. At this time, we'll have any public comments on this item.
Seeing none?
Seeing no public comments, we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion or a motion.
I make a motion, we approve it and send it to city council.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Anything else to add?
I was just curious with the lot line adjustment, that won't affect any design elements. I think that's what you said, correct? No. Okay.
Well, that's on a different lot to the north, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I guess we have a roll call vote.
Hartley,
Aye.
Holst,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Leeper, abstain, Lynch, abstain, Prideaux,
Aye.
Saul,
Aye.
Schrod,
Aye.
Sears.
Aye.
All right, that passes and also moves along to council. Moving on to new business, we've got site plan at 703 Brandolin Boulevard.
Thank you. So this is my last one for tonight. The parcel that we're looking at, the parcel that we're looking at is at 703 Brandolin Boulevard on Lot 3 of Pinnacle Prairie Commercial South Phase 4. The site is located south of the Dress for Less, Hobby Lobby, Home Goods, and the Dollar Tree. Collins Community Credit Union and the BioLife is south, and Walmart is to the east. The applicant is proposing a new 8,516 square foot building, and on the site plan includes 67 proposed parking spaces, only needs 65 spaces. Also includes a dumpster enclosure. Access would be onto Brandolin Boulevard onto the south, and then new 2 accesses to the north in a shared easement. The applicant also proposes 6 bicycle parking spaces on the southeast of the building. As outlined in the staff report, the site plan meets the setbacks, open space, parking, signage, and use allowed in the Highway 1 zoning district. And looking at the landscaping plan, that landscaping plan that was provided in the packet and that's on our website tonight shows that the applicant meets the points requirements as outlined in the Highway 1 zoning district. And they also meet the interior parking lot standards. The site plan that was proposed in the packet as well as on the website did not have adequate screening between the parking lot and the public right-of-way along the internal circulation. The applicant provided a new landscaping plan today, which was emailed to the commissioners as well as provided today on the dais before you walked in. The revised landscaping plan does provide that extra screening that is asked for, and it also increases the points on the application that would be amended to the site, or that would amend the site, amend the staff report that is provided to you. And staff recommends approval of this site plan, of this landscaping plan. So moving it along, this is still in the Highway 1 zoning district, and we do have design review standards within that Highway 1 zoning district. And the applicant is proposing a one-story building with a flat roof and additional parapets. The applicant proposes the building materials of the exterior to be a fiber cement siding in espresso and pecan colors, a pad-clad aluminum panel, and a stone white. The applicant also proposes a brick with a vintage black veneer that would provide a change of materials as well as colors. And reviewing all the requirements within the code, staff recommends approval. And staff also recommends deleting condition number 2 as outlined in the staff report, since the applicant submitted a revised site plan. Staff is available for questions.
Thank you, Michelle. I think I'm going to take this one back. Thank you. Thanks, Kyle, for filling in. With that, does the applicant have any comments?
We have no comments. Architect and civil is here tonight if there's any questions.
All right. Seeing none, we'll take it to the public. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak to this item? All right, we'll bring it back to the commission. Again, this item is for discussion and consider making a recommendation to City Council.
I would move to approve as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the item?
Looks like all pretty straightforward to me and meets all the criteria, so I don't see any problems.
All right, with that, we'll take a roll call vote.
Okay, Hartley,
Aye.
Holst,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Leeper,
Aye.
Lynch is absent, Trudeau,
Aye.
Saul,
Aye.
Schrod,
Aye.
and Sears.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried with 8 yay votes, aye votes, I guess.
All right, thank you, Tom. That item will move on to City Council. Our next item of new business is a series of land use map amendments from medium-density residential to community, commercial, another rezoning from A1 agricultural to C2 commercial, and S1 shopping district to PC2 planned commercial district. This is on, project is on First Street, and this item is for introduction and discussion tonight. Tom, I think you're kicking us off?
Yes, I am, thank you. And the purpose of the land use map amendment is because they're requesting a zoning that'll be commercial to an agriculture property. So the location, as you stated, is on West First Street. It's just east of Magnolia Drive, and you can see the properties outlined. We have 3 zoning currently, Ag A1, C2, and S1, which is the shopping center district. The western portion, which is the ag property, approximately 5 acres, is proposed to be changed from the A1 to the PC2. The middle property, highlighted in a, sort of a pinkish color, is 2.7 acres going from C2 to PC2. And then the east portion, the majority of the property, is currently zoned shopping center or S1. It's 20 acres, and the request is to change it to the PC2 as well. The agriculture district serves as a holding district until there's municipal services available to the site. The C2 district caters to neighborhood business and regional commercial uses. The S1 shopping district is intended to provide for development of planned retail and service areas under single ownership, management, or control, characterized by a concentrated grouping of stores and compatible uses, with various facilities designed in common, such as ingress, egress, and extensive parking accommodations. So that's what's currently out there. The proposed planned commercial district is intended to promote and facilitate imaginative and comprehensively planned commercial developments, which are harmoniously designed to complement the surrounding community. It is further the purpose of these regulations to encourage high standards of building architecture and site planning, which will foster commercial development that maximizes pedestrian convenience, comfort, and pleasure. The compliance with the comprehensive plan, so if you see on the screen, there's a section to the west that's currently, the land use is medium density residential. And though if the rezoning goes forward, then that will go to a recommended community commercial land use for that area. The rest of it around it, the medium density will remain the same. They have provided a master development plan for Thunder Ridge, and there's a series of plans that are identified that need to be submitted at the time of the rezoning for staff to review and see whether it meets the requirements for the PC2. They have presented some of those. Some of those are more technical, but there are some, such as a master development plan, which we have provided here, that needs to be submitted. The purpose of today's meeting is the introduction of the rezoning and the master development plan. Their list of potential uses include neighborhood commercial, individual users such as architects, attorneys, etc., office research, general office, retail and service uses such as a grocery store, cleaner, bakery, card shop, a convenience store, a gas station, medical dental offices, financial institutions or financial offices, drugstore, medical supply, and restaurants at appropriate locations. As part of the site plan submittal, there to provide some architectural renderings to look at how building materials, landscaping, and so forth. The vision for the Thunder Ridge is based upon a desire to integrate Iowa's rural heritage through building outlines, landscapes, trails, and the use of native trees, plants, and naturally occurring colors. The landscape will be designed using native trees and shrubs, prairie grasses, and other similar plants, as well as naturally occurring fieldstone and limestone. Appropriate open space elements will be integrated into the overall design. The architectural character of Thunder Ridge will emphasize a pleasing visual environment achieved by breaking up roof lines and large facades through architectural replication of Iowa's agricultural heritage and varying textures and vertical and horizontal siding, while minimizing the negative impacts of featureless walls. The parking lots will be providing adequate landscape islands and plantings for visual and general cooling effects. Parking lots will be unified with the rest of the development through the use of landscape, signage, and lighting systems scaled to the intended use, whether it is parking or for the streets. So these are just a couple of examples of the medical office building and the strip center that they have proposed. Some of the other items that were reviewed, that were presented, is the use location. They're proposing on the west side where it's currently zoned agriculture, a gas station, convenience store, and a full-service restaurant. And we'll talk a little more about these locations in the future. Staff feels that this is a little intensive for an area adjacent to what's proposed to be residential, the RP plan district. They're proposing two possible easements to that RP property to provide access. One is located at the north end, or to the north by the gas station convenience store, and then there's another one located to the south of the full-service restaurant. And the applicant wishes to choose which one to use as the property develops. Staff recommends really that the extension of Whitetail Drive, the one across the north, that be the preferred access point. You'll see an area that's got some wetlands where the extension of Lake Ridge Drive is proposed to the south of the property. There have been there's been an environmental report submitted, and there's a question of the source of that wetland. There's been caffeine, the report reported caffeine in there, which could indicate possibly coming from a sewer. And the existing sewer lines they're showing them, the sewer line is in red, the water line is in blue, and both of those will need to be relocated as part of this project, and we'll talk a little more about that through the phasing plan. They have noted that there is a stormwater easement across First Street that was developed early on for stormwater, but there'll need to be more detailed stormwater data as the properties develop, since they've not really, the developer has not got any firm development plans. As this comes in, subdivision goes through, there'll need to be more detailed studies of the stormwater and how that will be handled. Another issue is the traffic pedestrian circulation, and they're not proposing to place any sidewalks along the north side of First Street. And you can see the issue here is they're stating that there's no sidewalks along that south side of First Street. However, there's several acres of property that will develop in the future. We would expect sidewalks to be built at that time. The areas where there's currently not sidewalks, some program there'll be in the future will connect that, because as the city grows west to Union Road, there's going to be a need for sidewalks along both sides. First Street's very busy. The circulation issue is they're proposing to provide crosswalks from the 10-foot trail on the north side of the street. However, part of the considerations for the PC zoning district is pedestrian easement, access that is easy, convenient, promotes that. Anyone coming from the north side would have to cross First Street and then walk down to the sidewalks that will be installed along the north side of Whitetail Drive. But if they want to go to one of the uses on the inside, then they have to come down to that sidewalk, walk over, and then walk back up. So if there was access along North First Street, then they could walk and get access from the north side. The location of the Lake Ridge Drive extension, they're proposing an extension, but it's the issues with the phasing plan. Right now, the only access north-south connection to the neighborhoods to the south between Union and Hudson is Magnolia. And then I did not note it in the staff report, but as you can see on the map, there is Highland Drive does go into those south neighborhoods. And again, as this develops, there's going to be a lot of uses that may be attractive to the neighborhood. People would like to have access to them without having to go out and around and back into the development site. So the phasing plan, you'll see they're proposing, I forgot to change the colors on the slide. I tried to match this to the staff report for your ease. Phase 1 is shown is yellow on the map, and it includes 5 lots, the 4 lots along First Street and between First Street and the extension of Whitetail Drive, and then lots 7 and 8, which is the medical office and the memory care center. Phase 2 involves the full-service restaurant, lot 5, and the strip center, lot 6, and at that point, then they would do the extension of Lake Ridge Drive down to the south end of the property. We recognize that this is a lot of infrastructure that has to be dealt with through this process. The relocation of the sewer and the water lines will go into the Lake Ridge Drive right away. There's extensive intersection improvements along West First Street. If you look at on the south side, at this site, there's a difference of greater than 15 feet between the current street level and the hilltop, so that grade will have to be adjusted. It's going to require the utilities in that area also be lowered to meet the new street profile. But staff in the phasing plan would recommend that lot 7 be included in phase 2 so that there would be a little more incentive at this case. If these lots develop, there's no guarantee that we would see lot 5 and 6 ever developed, and therefore that extension of Lake Ridge Drive may not move forward, or at least not as quickly as may be necessary. There are some unresolved issues around the request of rezoning of the property. The guideline standards and plans do not match the guideline standard talks about siting of buildings, parking lots, but none of the plans reflect those design guidelines. Pedestrian access and safety, and as I mentioned, those items with crossing First Street and having to go down into the Whitetail Drive, that's not really convenient access. If we look at the street connectivity, again, for pedestrians, there'll be people that will want to walk to these establishments. So pedestrian access is important. I don't think I mentioned it, but another issue is how do people get from the public sidewalks to the building entrances? The site plans do not really provide clear access. There's nothing noted on the master plan or any other plans. And a lot of times pedestrians and cars and parking lots, there's a conflict there. And so this is an opportunity to do a design that would deal with that and get people going forward safely. The connection to the RP zone property, there's an approved plan that's dependent upon getting access to Lake Ridge Drive. The current owner of the Thunder Ridge property also owns the RP property, so this is an opportunity to really finalize access points for both plans in the future. The location of intensity of uses, as I mentioned earlier, they're proposing a gas station convenience store on the west side of Lake Ridge Drive and south of First Street, and then the restaurant. And we had suggested maybe they reconsider that and put a gas convenience store is a pretty intensive use. They have a lot of times long hours, open up early in the morning if they're not 24 hours, and that may be more appropriate to the side of the property that adjoins currently commercial properties, and then look at their list of uses, have office uses and uses that would probably fit and be more compatible with residential or the RP district, which would be multifamily residential, as well as the properties on the north side of First Street. And then just the general pedestrian circulation and access. Again, we talked about that coming in from First Street as well as connections to other properties. The staff recommendation is for denial of the request for the following reasons. The intent of the PC Planned Commercial District is to promote and facilitate imaginative and comprehensively planned commercial developments which are harmoniously designed to complement the surrounding community. The placement of the more intensive commercial uses adjacent to the RP district does not reflect a design that would harmoniously complement the RP district. Again, looking at the intent of the PC2 district, the applicant's proposed design guideline standards mentioning building siding and parking lot placement on corner lots, but they do not fully consider pedestrian access from the public sidewalks to the building entrances. In addition, land use, landscaping, and phasing plans do not reflect the intent of the applicant's proposed design guidelines and standards for the buildings and the parking lot sidings. So in this case, we would like to see the buildings reflect that. You know, it's a discussion to have how those should meet, but there are ways to be able to site a building and provide access and still have your parking that works in concert. The intent of the PC zoning district is to foster development that maximizes pedestrian convenience, comfort, and pleasure. A lot of the uses that are proposed would work for pedestrian type of access, but unfortunately the emission of the sidewalks along West First Street does not take into consideration how pedestrians can conveniently and comfortably access the buildings from West First Street and the trail connection to the north side. And finally, the proposed development phasing plan does not provide assurance that Lake Ridge Drive will be constructed from Whitetail Drive to the adjacent property to the south. The Lake Ridge Drive extension is a key component to facilitating a comprehensively planned development. The street connection will provide vehicle and pedestrian access for all the neighborhoods to the south. Providing this critical street connection will not only benefit the larger community, but will provide a direct route for customers and patrons to access the proposed commercial development. I'll be happy to answer any questions. There's a lot more information in the staff report you may have questions about.
All right, thank you, Tom. It's a thorough report. Is there anyone from the applicant that would like to add anything or speak to any of those items? Say your name and address, please.
Wendell Lupkus with VJ Engineering, 1501 Technology Parkway, Cedar Falls. A little background to begin with. I've been affiliated with the various owners of this property since 1996. So if we're going to have a trivia contest later, I've got a leg up on you. In general, the owners of this property, they made some capital investments to support the previous owners. One thing led to another, and they became the de facto owners of this property. They don't necessarily intend to develop the commercial side of it. And actually, when we initially talked with the city, we wanted to rezone just to a C2. In those early conversations, the city said, well, we'd like to look at it and more define what's going to be there, so let's go to PC2. So we're trying to work with the city, but yet not paint ourselves so much into a corner to where we're going to limit sales of this property. You know, in other words, and I guess let's go right to the building siting. We don't know, is a national tenant going to buy this lot? Do they want their parking here? Do they want it in the back? We don't know those things. We want to put in the design guidelines the intent that we talk about in the PC2, but yet we don't want to slam the door shut so that if, well, even a McDonald's or what, you know, we don't really necessarily want a McDonald's there, but a credit union or whatever, if they want to set and actually back to First Street with their parking, because all vehicular access is going to come from Whitetail. Okay, so really the front doors are going to be towards Whitetail. That's just the reality of it. But anyway, okay, I'm getting a little bit out of my path here, but okay. Back up just a little bit to comment about the stormwater detention. That was placed on the other side, and it's actually the pond in Ridge's third edition. And the city actually was part of a legal action, and the Public Works Director testified that, yes, that is capacity for what's over there. However, since that was put in, the ordinances have changed, so there will have to be on each individual lot a water quality feature. What we're talking about is, it's called a hydrodynamic separator. The Hampton Inn downtown has one. The new CBT Bank has one. Deary's over by their body shop has one. So they're pretty much common updates to the older style stuff. Okay, so, and there again, that's kind of more into the plating and design things. So I guess with that, Tom, can we bring up what we call, what I sent you today, Exhibit 1?
Okay.
That's out at Viking Plaza. So let's talk first about the pedestrian access and the sidewalks along First Street. And even that, I mean, if we have to, if that's a deal breaker, we can live with that. But what I would say is if the city feels that that's something that needs to be done, I would like to see in the design guidelines that is not going to be required ADA route to the buildings from there. If you, obviously, I think most of you've all driven out there. I spent the better part of a day trying to design a route to the Walgreens from the sidewalk at the corner, and we had zigzag, we had handrails and that. It's just not going to work coming from First Street, having an ADA route to there. So the ADA route, if you decide to have a First Street sidewalk, is going to have to be from Whitetail. So anyway, okay, so we've got this up now. This is out at the Viking Road area. So we got Brandyland, we got Viking Road, and we got Viking Plaza. So and all these roads are either recently or currently under reconstruction. So that's kind of the state of the art of what the city wants for pedestrian access. So we got a trail along Viking Road, and then that comes up past Subway and then out to, well, I guess it's a DePaco now being built. So we've got that, and then if you look at that, which is, I think, similar to West First Street, we got a trail on the north side of the road. If we look on the south side of Viking Road, there's no sidewalks. Where are the sidewalks? They're at the First Street South, where there's vehicular access. So, I mean, that's consistent. If we could bring up number 2. Number 2 is the, basically it's the construction plans for the reconstruction of Brandy Lynn out there in front of Blaine's. And basically what you're seeing is, there again, you've got a trail on the north side, which then does a 90 and comes down back in front of Subway. But page 2 of that shows in front of in front of Blaine's, in front of the McDonald's. What else is in there? But anyway, all along that street, there is no sidewalk there. So And it's, it's common, the DOT reconstructed West First Street. As part of that, there was a trail on the north side. So if it made sense to put a trail on one side and a sidewalk on the other side, probably would have done the sidewalk at the same time. So, but that's our opinion, is that the sidewalk along First Street is unnecessary, mainly because the frontage of those businesses is going to be a whitetail, okay? And also, we talked a little bit about the RP. Can you go to one in the middle of I think the land use one in the middle of your packet? I think that shows the RP on the other side.
Just the one,
Yeah, the land use, I think we see enough of the RP area on the other side. So anyway,
you can see some of the development.
yeah, anyway, so you, as you can imagine, you got 200 and some apartments here. Well, are you gonna have all those people go all the way up to First Street and then walk over and then down to get into the front of those buildings? I don't think so. I think you wanna basically whitetail, which is gonna be consistent with the sidewalks in front of Walgreens, the wild hair, whatever else. So anyway, that's our point with that. Not a deal breaker either way, but we think it makes sense not to do it. And then probably, like I say, the building siting, what we want to do is express the intent in the design guidelines. And then, well, we only want to change the land use thing once. So hopefully we get that figured out, and then we'll change the land use drawings to what they need to be. But there again, I think we need to leave a little bit of wiggle room so that if we get a tenant that wants it set back from the street and wants his parking in front, I think we need to leave that option open, okay? Like I say, the issue that we've got is not being the developer, we want to protect the city's interest, but we also want to keep our market share open, so that's kind of where we're at. Okay, now, as far as the extension of Lake Ridge, like I say, I've been involved with this property since 1996, and in my initial discussions with the city staff, I said, what's typically happened over these past 25 years is you have one owner on one side of Lakeview, it used to be called Lakeview, and then on the other side, and they never had exactly the same timing, and more times than not, I would see that the city tried to force the extension of Lake Ridge, and it would kill projects, quite honestly. In this case, we have an owner that doesn't want to be a developer on the commercial side, but that we are actually working with them on updating the RP plan, so that project is going to go forward. So I think we've got all the elements that we need now, and I think trying to alter which lots are developed at which time in order to try and leverage the extension of Lakeview, which we're not going to be able to connect it anyway. There's still 325 feet that's owned by the owner to the south, the apartment buildings and Clark Properties, and so how does that get done? So even that kind of, strong arming of the developer is not really going to accomplish the street extension. So, do we have number 3, Tom? Can we put that up? The city has always had, or not always, but since 1974, has had the option of installing it was called Lakeview at the time. In 1974, the previous owner, he developed part of the mall, put in, he had up to 500 units of apartments and all this and that. It was a huge agreement. Lift stations, force mains, the whole deal. As part of that, this section, that the developer will dedicate to the city of Cedar Falls for street purposes, Lakeview, a strip of land 40 feet wide, the entire width, the boundary line of said property by the developer. Developer waives all question as to the jurisdiction of the city to levy the assessment and agrees to consent to an assessment equal to 50% of the cost, blah, blah, blah. So basically, gave everything on that side a 40-foot corridor all the way down to the south line of the commercial property. Okay, that was in 1974. So since then, the city has never exercised that right, determining that that was a critical street connection. Can we go to number 4, please? Same owner in 1978 platted Cedar Crest Second Edition. Okay.
I'm not seeing the number 4 loaded. I've got 1, 2, 3, and 5.
Okay. Well, I can describe this. It's kind of like being on radio. So Cedar Crest Second Edition was platted, and on the west edge of it, which is the section line, that was
It is showing up
Okay.
there, so.
Okay. So, yeah, can you go to page 2 of that, please, Tom?
Can we see, there we go.
Yeah, so at the top it says Thunder Ridge Development. That was the part that there was a 40-foot strip given and waived the assessment, blah, blah, blah. So then this was actually a subdivision plat, and there was a 40-foot dedication of right-of-way, which then became public ownership. And in the owner's statement, under section 6, which is like page 5 of that document, that at such time as the west one half of Lakeview Drive, said addition to the west is dedicated for a public street, blah, blah, blah. The owner itself, successors and assigns improvements, agrees to consent to an assessment equal to 50%, blah, blah, blah. So there was always a 40-foot corridor, half of the right-of-way, all the way to 4th Street for the future extension of Lakeview. Well, did the city hold that? No, they didn't. If we can put up number 5. In 2005, over the course of the years between 1978 and 2005, the city vacated and either sold or gave away that right-of-way from Crescent Drive down to 4th Street. And in 2005, that right-of-way was platted into various lots as part of Pheasant Hollow 3rd Edition. So there again, it kind of begs the question, is that a supercritical connection? It is to the developer. So the developer, in order for him to develop his RP, which is basically his area of expertise, his business, that's what he does, that's going to happen anyway. So there's no need to take a profitable, saleable lot and try and coerce a connection that's going to be 325 feet short of getting to Crescent Drive anyway. So I guess with that, I think that covers most what I need to talk about, so I would be happy to answer any questions.
So Wendell, going back to the beginning, I'm looking at this and you say the owner's not looking to do the commercial development, they're really just looking at the residential portion of this, is that?
Right.
Okay, so you also mentioned that C2 had been talked about instead of the RP or the PC2.
Yeah, well, my thought is, like I said, I've been down this road a few times, so to speak, and, you know, being not, if the owner doesn't want to actually develop it, it's more difficult to know what's going to go in and
Right.
what you can agree to and things. So that's why, from a development standpoint, and that's who I'm supposed to be looking out for in conjunction with the city, but mainly the client. It makes more sense if you can to do it in a C2 district, which is more or less wide open. Everything is still going to come back, whether it's PC2 or whether it's C2, is still going to come back right here for approval.
So basically, the commercial development you're showing here on this concept is just strictly just an idea, right?
Pulled it out of the air.
So I guess my question back to the city staff is, why not look at the C2 versus the PC2? Because we're asking an awful lot of, I mean, a PC2 asks for a pretty good plan, you know, a pretty well-developed plan. And obviously, what I'm seeing here is you don't have that plan.
Well, I think
I
the
mean,
plan.
if you're not developing it, you're not,
Well, but it's realistic. What I think the city's goal is they want something so that when individuals come in with a specific, like a Lot 4, then you can go back and say, well, this is what everybody agreed to. This is kind of what you're going to do. And then, of course, you know, there's going to be some tweaking and, well, the landscape, if you're going to do this, then the landscaping has to be that. And like I say, we want to cooperate, and I think we can do that. I think we're actually pretty close.
okay.
But yeah, some
I-
of these things,
I'm just looking at it, I'm having a hard time understanding it.
yeah, imagine a simple guy like me. But I think on Zoom, is Packer on Zoom? Do we know?
Yes.
Okay. Packer, do you have any comments?
And this is just a discussion item tonight, right, Brad?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I kind of looked at it as kind of a work session.
Yeah.
I mean, between Tom and I, we each have our marching orders, and we've gotten close, but it'd be nice to figure out so that, and there is actually 3 weeks till the next meeting, so, but it would be nice if we can get some feedback so we know, you know, are you gonna make us put a sidewalk in First Street, or are we gonna lose Lot 7 till the second phase? You know,
So
if we get a little feedback would be helpful.
Back to you on that, Wendell, I mean, my opinion would be, yeah, we ought to have sidewalks on First Street, because that is a busy road, and, you know, I know there's the trail on the north side, but, you know, there's potential for a lot of back and forth there, and that's, First Street's not when you want to be crossing all the time, you know. You're either on one side of it or not. It's kind of a river running through there, in my mind, so.
Well, but Marty, though, you know, if you look at it, though, you're gonna cross it, if you wanna get to that sidewalk that runs along First Street, you're gonna cross West First Street anyway. I mean, if you're in the ridges or whatever, you have to cross West First Street to get to that sidewalk too. My point is, that sidewalk is on the back of the businesses. And
Yeah, some of them, but, and I agree with your point about the, I mean, not requiring ADA access from the sidewalk there. I mean, I don't think that,
well,
I mean, I don't think that certainly would be a requirement.
kind of, in my opinion, it's kind of counterproductive if you put a sidewalk in and you can't provide ADA access. And I
Well,
just don't,
If there's,
There's a lot of sidewalks in this world that aren't ADA compliant that are very useful.
Just still have to have a path.
If there's commercial development along First Street, other than the main access off Whitetail, you really don't want access to those businesses off First Street, right?
No.
But in the consideration, and I didn't bring it out in the staff report, these buildings are really going to have presence on First Street and on Whitetail. The entrance may be on Whitetail, but they'll still be, this is the gateway into the city, so we don't really want the buildings having a typical back door to them. So we want a design that is more of a 360 design. And you know, that's one of the reasons for the PC as well. The city has an opportunity to review some of the design. The C2 district, the standards are set. There is some site plan review, but if it's zoned for that use, then there's very little latitude the city can get on some of these items. The PC2 looks at design and materials, so there's a chance to bring in a little bit more imaginative, better design as opposed to just a C2. And the fact that some of these things don't match up in the design guidelines with the map is that you'll have people come in and say, well, the design guidelines say this, but we have a map that shows that the parking lot is at the corners and the buildings are set back. And we're not seeing some of those. So that's some of the issues with why the plans aren't matching up. Certainly, they talk about it a little bit, but, you know, we want to make sure that the language in here is something very agreed upon by both parties. It's very clear, because the developer is not developing, the owner is not developing it. They sell the property, then you have someone coming and saying, well, I didn't really understand that, and then we have to persuade that was the intent, where if it's clearly written, then we can say, it's on this document, it's on the plan, things match, that was the intent.
I guess I would tend to agree with Marty that it seems to me that the language of the agreement is more important than the drawing, because we don't really know. I mean, they've self-said that, you know, this is a guess. So can the language of the agreement be such that it meets the design guidelines at a future date? How critical is it that all of these things, all of the Ts are crossed and Is are dotted at this time on the drawing?
I guess the other question I have currently, on the north side of the street, you have a great trail, goes all the way out to Union Road. And I've gone out that way many times. So if you look at saying, okay, now you got to put a sidewalk on the south side of that development, that's going to be what, 2 blocks? Then it's going to dead end? Why?
Exactly, there'll be nowhere to go,
Yeah.
because all that other land is already developed and
Well,
sold.
and like I say, if you go look at, you know, Viking
Right.
Plaza and that sort of thing, and those streets have been reconstructed, so that's pretty much the state of the art of how you move people and vehicles around. That's not how it's done when the city was paying the bill. So,
And I would agree with Marty and Brad on developing the language, but not requiring all the full drawings, because
well,
you don't want to prevent someone from coming in and investing in those.
right, and we don't have a problem changing the drawings, but we want to iron out, make sure everybody's okay with the language before we do that, because I don't know how many times we changed the drawing so far. But I think, and I think, I don't remember what the latest of the language was, but it talked something about the priority of siting the buildings towards the street with access or whatever. But yeah, we'll hammer out some language and have that for our next meeting. But and I guess the other thing is, and it has to do with, at some point, I don't know whether this owner is going to take it through plating. We do have, I can't say much, but we do have local interest. So those people may take over and do the plating. We don't know yet how that's all going to unfold, but I think a large part of it, when you put the pencil to the paper, is if you have that lot 7 and you can't generate $1 off of that until you put, well, and even putting it into phase 2, like I say, only gets you 325 feet away from your goal. So I think in order for that, and it's still, everything complies with the subdivision ordinance and everything. If we put lot 7 in phase 1, there's a huge amount of expense getting that road punched into First Street. Huge. There's a lot of utilities that were put in when West First Street was reconstructed. There was actually, Garth stopped them from putting in, there was going to be a huge retaining wall there, but at least we don't have to tear that out, so.
Does anyone have any other questions for Wendell?
I was curious about buffering from the residential area. That was one of the other concerns.
Right, and I think there again, this is a unique opportunity because the owner who intends to develop the RP is also the driving force of this, and they don't seem to have any concern on that. So.
Any other questions for Wendell? All right, thank you, Wendell.
Thank you.
With that, I'll open it up to the public. Is there any from the public that would like to speak to the item, either online or in person?
Packer, I mean, he left us and he came back. But he's not raising his hand, so.
If you're online, raise your hand.
Yeah.
Seeing none, we will bring it back to the commission for discussion. Here's one item I would have is that it seems like we have a couple of items are really addressing connectivity, you know, connectivity of roads, connectivity of sidewalks, and I agree with Wendell. He's not wrong in terms of we're connecting to nothing, but if we don't do it here, we're never going to connect to anything. So this is a long-term plan, and if we approved, if we denied those kinds of connections on every project, we would never have connectivity in the city. And so,
Yeah.
to me, it's a good point. However, we're building for the future, not necessarily today with those things.
And
Well,
there's a little difference in this area along First Street. This is more residential than the retail area there along Brandy Lane and Viking Road. That's, people have to, a lot of times, have to get in their car to get there because there's no residential around it. This area is quite developed as residential, so sidewalks make sense because people walk more today than they did 15 years ago. When I started planning in 2001, nobody talked about sidewalks. And within 10 years, walkability was the key word, and it wasn't just a planning word, it was property owners and developers. We have people, that work in factories that wanted to walk on their lunch hour. And if industrial parks don't necessarily have sidewalks, they're walking in the street, and then you've got trucks and things like that. So, this day and age, health, walking, and that type of thing is really important.
Well, the sidewalk thing is not a hill that I personally would be willing to die on. I feel like I can see both sides of it. If you look at all of the newest, sort of halo roads or thoroughfares in town, they do have walkability on both sides. Brandolin, I don't know if it's a great example because every part of that has been kind of a hack job experiment from the get-go. I mean, even the DOT's piece of it. So I don't know if it's a really good example of anything, to be honest. If we look at University and we look at Green Hill, you could use Green Hill as an example for either argument, where there's always been a nice trail on the north side of the road, and that's the one that everybody uses, and the one on the south side of the road has always been kind of patchwork. But as development has filled in, it does get used, and it just makes for a welcoming corridor. To the ADA thing, if there are sort of stickler items that make it impractical to deliver, I could definitely empathize with those things. But I would tend to lean towards favoring the idea of some sort of sidewalk or walkability along the frontage. Beyond that, I feel a little bit differently. I'm reluctant to echo the word strong arm, but on that lot 7, where it doesn't even touch that future lot, handcuffing that lot for connection of a road just seems like a little bit of an overreach as far as I'm concerned. And if the idea of this, and all interests considered, is to see development, then give it everything everybody has and give it some opportunity to grow. And if that in turn spurs on development with the RP section, and there's road connection required for that anyway, let it happen naturally. I just don't see it fair to the owner or any future developer of, lot 7 potentially, which is a nice sized piece, to have that constrained to a road that it doesn't even abut. As for the PC2 versus C2, even though PC2 is definitely a warm and fuzzy and newer zone in a way than C2, because we're, to put it bluntly, allowed to have our fingers in it. There are a lot of good reasons for that, everything from the trails to the building design, that sort of thing. Where that line starts to blur a little bit is that we're looking at concept. And so do we hold this up for a year or two to look at all of it into a crystal ball as to what is exactly going to get built there? I don't think that's practical or reasonable. And if C2 is too far of a step backwards into the past, or doesn't allow us some of the latitudes that we need to meet the direction of things, then maybe the compromise is to offer some latitude with the building design and the fact that these are all speculative places. What I kept thinking about the whole time during the presentation, or the explanation of some of these denials, recommendations was the idea of a single-family residential development. So say you have, you know, a 30-lot plat, and you wouldn't be able to rezone a residential development until you had building plans for all 30 or 40 houses. Who knows who's going to buy them and what they're going to want to build exactly. If the owner were developing all of this and on a set timetable, it would make a little bit sense to take a different approach. But if we're just trying to create a canvas, I don't think it's fair for us to mud that up with a bunch of hypotheticals that we don't really have any ideas on. Last thing I wanted to touch on was the, well, let me back up. I guess I already talked about the phasing, so that was all I had for now.
Thank you, Kyle. Any other discussion?
I think this one's challenging just because we don't want to hamstring any development. I mean, that area of town is in need of development, but I also worry about taking that step back and not having some more guidelines and control over how that looks, especially in the future development. As we grow that direction, we want to have more control over what that looks like. In terms of the pedestrian access, I would also, I would want to push for sidewalks on that area, just more walkability and accessibility. The street connectivity, I think it's kind of odd if we're requiring it, especially if we're 325 feet short. So I think that would be one area where I would be more lenient on, but the access and walkability would be an area I'd want to see.
And on that street accessibility thing, if that residential, that RP area were to take off, and then the road were to be added or connected, and we're still 325 feet short, what happens then? Does that become a reason to not allow the RP development, or could the city, if they wanted to, put in 325 feet of road to give a little bit and maybe make that something happen? I don't know what the proper avenues are for that sort of thing, but some things, I guess, to consider as the development aspect of the project were to continue.
I think part of the Clark property right now doesn't have good access. So that, you know, as that gets ready to develop, then they would be required to make the connection to Crescent and up. And I think there's a plan that they actually have a connection that goes around in the rest of the subdivision. I can't say about the city providing the connection for that last 325 feet, but as development happens, demand increases, and at that point, then things may change.
I guess my point is that if it were to truly become that important, it could be done. There's a way that it could be done. The city could provide that to the city, and you know, rather than having it be a requirement where someone doesn't have any control in order to, you know, spur that development.
And I don't think that they're not stating they're going to build the street. It was just the timing of the street. And I did not know before I wrote the staff report that the RP property was under consideration. They hadn't had any plans, and the issue with that connection at some point would be dependent upon the RP property as well as some of the other. And we, you know, just leaving two lots out of the picture and not knowing if the RP wasn't going forward, that street may not, you know, would never get extended to the south end of the property.
I have a question. Maybe this is something for staff for the next meeting. The applicant said that they originally proposed C2, and for a couple of reasons that were mentioned, got, I guess, rerouted to PC2. I'd be curious to know what the specific reasons or areas of concern were that led to that direction. I guess we heard about the sidewalks and maybe the building design, but you know, what are those concerns, and can we make sure that those parameters are sort of addressed from a high level and then let the market make it happen. And I think it was said earlier that we would have plenty of opportunity at platting, at each of these individual site plan reviews, to be able to get into some of the specifics.
Right, when any of the projects come in, they would be reviewed based upon the design guidelines and their plans for development. So we would look at those two items to see if it met with what they're proposing. As far as the C2, you know, I mentioned in the staff report, in 2005, there was a move to rezone the current C2 property and the RP properties to the shopping center district, and that was met with opposition and withdrawn twice. So the PC2, I think staff looked at that as really having, the C2 really opened the door to a lot of uses that may not be appropriate, and wanted to be able to have the PC2 to look at the type of uses that might be appropriate, where they might be appropriate in the site, and to have some guarantee not only for the developer, but for the neighborhood. So when they understand what's happening and what could go in there in the future. And I wasn't here when this was first brought up. I started last September and met Wendell, and we started down that road together, but I wasn't in on the discussion with why it was recommended, but we can find that out for the next meeting.
Thank you, Tom.
I do understand the difference between C2 and PC2, and I understand why the city wants the PC2. I just don't think we can require all of the detail at this point that the city's asking for, you know.
Yeah, actually, I think the first request for C2 probably was with the previous owner. I don't know, it kind of blurs after 24 years. But I think at that time, Stephanie, I think because it was more or less infill and you had that much residential, that's kind of why they decided, well, let's go to PC2, which, like I say, you have your fingers in it then, so.
Yeah.
Trying. I think we're pretty close. I think if we work on the design guidelines with some of that language, and as long as we can, we'll require that the sidewalk goes in. What I'd like to see is the sidewalk along First Street goes in at the time, you know, like when you build a house, that's when you put the sidewalk in. And then just exempt the ADA route. If they can do an ADA route, great, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it's the position of this commission to exempt an ADA route,
Right.
but
Well, let me rephrase that the West First Street need not be the ADA route. The
Correct.
expected ADA route is from Whitetail. So we'll work on that kind of language. What else do we need to do? Okay. Yeah, I think we're close.
yeah, so I guess, you know, overall, I'll restate, if there's a way to do these PC2s, you know, for these kinds of developments that are speculative at the point, it seems like there needs to be some means to deal with that.
I think the end game is good. It's the right approach. My point in bringing up a few of these things is that, you know, I would just hate to get hung up for 6 months because of a gas station when there's the idea that somebody might think that it's a bad idea when it's just conceptual. And if there's nobody kicking and screaming about it at a conceptual level, and more importantly, if there's not anything illegal about putting it there, then who are we or anybody else to stand in the way of what might be a good idea, and whether it truly is or not could be realized at a future point with the framework that we allotted for.
Any other comments? I guess I'd like to add that, you know, we tend to get caught in the details here, and that's what we're about, but it's exciting to see some development being considered here, and this is the first step. So thank you. All right, with that, closes our new business, and any commission updates?
No, I don't have any at this point, no.
All right, with no commission updates, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.